All right. Welcome to the You Matter Show podcast. I'm Mark Bradinsky, host of the You Matter Show, and we do this podcast for a reason because the deepest principle of human nature is the craving to be appreciated. It's not just a want or desire, it's a craving. It's built into our DNA. I mean, literally, you need a couple things to survive. You need food and water, shelter, and to feel valued and appreciated. Without the first two, you die physically. Without the third, you die inside. And one of the ways that can make you feel you matter and share your journey with other people is to do something like this, which is just tell your story, right? Everyone has a story. And what I love about this podcast is learning about other people's stories because we want to hear about your struggles, learn from your scars, and we all benefit from that. So I'm very excited today to have special guest Gil Coosner here on the You Matter Show podcast. I first met Gil through a club called the Darren Hardy Club. We're both members of that, and we got together, had a conversation. I said, Gil, you got a great story. Let's share it with the world. Let other people know about it. So it's a great journey he's had coming from Israel to New York to Iowa and all the things that happen in between. Because let's face it, if you're living a life, things are going to happen, and they're not always right. But overcoming those things and surviving and thriving is something we all want to hear about. So, Gil, welcome to the You Matter Show podcast.
Thanks, Mark. This is awesome and exciting. I apologize for the background noise. I'm in my manufacturing facility, so you might hear some knocking, pumping, and other noise in the background. So I apologize for that.
It's all good because you have a bottling facility there for Blue Ox Vodka.
We do Blue Ox Spirits is the name of the company. I have the shirt here. Blue Ox Spirits. Blue Ox Vodka is our number one selling product within the state of Iowa. We sell to 4 states besides in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Kansas as well. And we produce and bottle right here in the facility. So there's a wall here, there's insulation and stuff, but right beyond this wall is where the bottling room is. The processing room is beyond that. So, and the warehouse is beyond that.
It's okay as long as it's bottling and not drunk people bumping into each other.
Oh, no drinking in this facility.
You just manufacture, you don't drink it. You don't drink the product, right?
Correct.
Good. But let's go back to the beginning, because when we first spoke, I was very fascinated about where you began and how you got here, where you are now, because that's where you are now, but always connecting the dots moving back, where we learn a lot about people. And I'm sure there are times in your life where you didn't believe that you matter because of things that happened. And talking about how you overcome those things is fascinating to the people listening as well as myself. So tell us about your beginning coming from Israel.
Beginning, you want born and raised and throughout that period and then arriving to Iowa. Okay. So born and raised in a small little community just outside of Jerusalem, about, I want to say 15 miles directly south of Jerusalem. So my education I received in Jerusalem. And so I was born in a hospital in Jerusalem and raised on this farming community. And now that I live in Iowa, I usually, when I speak to people, I start off with a joke. And I say I was born in a small town in southern Iowa. Not exactly, because I grew up with tractors and horses and farming equipment. And when I was very young, I had to work some of the farming equipment and help around and do things that is traditionally like a small farm in Iowa. Crazy, right?
Yeah, it is.
But a lot of people don't associate Israel with farming and things like that. Maybe today they associate Israel with startups and technology and military and things that are, that's what people associate Israel with. So born and raised in this small community, went to a regional school just outside of Jerusalem. Big school, did horribly at school. Horribly. I was a terrible student. I lived in the shadow of my brother and my sister. My sister was an excellent student. My brother was an okay student. He got through it okay. I was just a horrible student. Learning disabilities, challenges, and maybe it's the people I associated with. I think I was the youngest, so maybe my parents didn't have the same energy they had with my older sister and brother.
They're worn
But
out.
I used to associate with not the best individuals. And I think that affected me not in the best way, but I learned a lot from it. And when I was 18, I joined the Israeli military. I served, I started out serving in a specialized unit. We won't go into too much detail. And then I finished out my service in southern Lebanon for a good amount of time and got out of the military, got on a plane, went to South Africa for a little bit. I have some family there. Spent a couple months there, came back to Israel, got on a plane again a couple of weeks later to New York to travel, and landed and stayed in New York. Just luck, right? I guess. Got offered a position working at several live music venues, nightlife, and you're 21 years old. This is what you want to do, right? Work behind the bar, be a bartender, meet women and stuff like that. I had hair then. I looked completely different.
Join the club.
But I started out on the ground floor. My English was not as good as it is today. Not that it's the best today, but it's a lot better. I started out promoting the clubs. When I say promoting, I do like this because promoting is giving out flyers and talking to people. Hey, why don't you go there? Check it out, see. And I did very well. And at some point after several months, the owner came and asked me to maybe see if I could bartend and learn how to bartend. Yeah, absolutely. Bartend in a nightclub in New York, absolutely. Did that for several months, did well, and then moved my way to a floor manager, and then eventually becoming the director of operations of several of these live music venues until 2007. In the meantime, I also met a girl, and got married. And that woman said, "You can't work anymore at night." She's my current wife. "You can't work at night anymore." And I had to figure out, what am I going to do? So end of 2006, I started taking classes and learning a little bit. Real estate. I took a class at NYU for real estate and investing and business and stuff like that. And got my license in real estate. And in 2007, left the nightlife, worked for a developer for a very short time, and then decided, okay, I'm going to open my own business. And went for it, did it. It was crazy. Everybody thought I was crazy. Everybody predicted the market was going to crash, but my stubborn self, I said, no way, the market's doing phenomenally. There's no chance anything will happen.
Oops.
Yeah. So in September of 2007 is when I opened my business, and I think either in November or in December of that year, the market just completely crashed. And I didn't know any better. So I was earning money, but not as much as the people that have been in real estate for many, many years. Now, it was challenging. The first year was extremely freaking challenging. Got into a lot of debt because I truly wanted it to succeed. Mm-hmm. My wife was trying to get pregnant at that time as well, because I wasn't in the nightlife anymore, and now it's time to have a family. I was working very, very long hours. I was leaving home at 7 a.m. and getting back home at 9 p.m. Things worked out eventually. They say don't work hard, work smart. I was 27 years old. I was just the only thing then is work hard, right? You don't know how to work smart. You just work hard, and you try every avenue at that age to try to put food on your table. Living in New York is not cheap.
But one of the things you told me when we spoke before is that it was a blessing to you, the market tanking, because the people that had been in it for a while are like, oh, we can't do this anymore. They knew too much, and sometimes knowing too much doesn't help you. You didn't know enough, so you're like, oh, I'm making some money. But then when the other people peel away and they're no longer in the industry, now you can pick up all the scraps of what's out there and build your business even better because you took advantage of a negative situation and turned it into a positive, which is what being resilient is all about.
That's accurate. So it took a good amount of time to get to that point where I was somewhat established. When I say somewhat established, I mean it in the somewhat established, right? Because there were offices and there were businesses that were 30, 40 years in business. My office is brand new, and I was coming with a fresh look. But there were people that were constantly, if you look at how the real estate market, what happens in the real estate market, when things are good, there's a lot of people that flock into the industry. And then when things are bad, a lot of people flock out of the industry. So 2001 to 2007, there was a huge surge of people in the industry that they all dropped out in 2007. Market started getting hard, started getting tough, and a lot of them dropped out. And that's when that's when the opportunities truly started happening, because I was there and I didn't know any better. And exactly that. So built an office, had good amount of agents. At our height, we had over 20 people working for us, and it was awesome. Working with us, actually, I'll say. Because everybody in real estate is self-employed. Even agents that work within your office are self-employed. And yeah, it was fun. And in 2012, had an opportunity to sell the business, and it was a question of, do we stay in New York? We had our kid in 2010. Our son Nathan was born in New York, and we had the opportunity to sell the business. And what do you do at that point? Do you stay in New York and figure out what you have to do, or do you move? And both my wife and I, my wife's originally from Iowa, grew up in smaller communities, and it was, we want our kids to feel what we felt when we grew up. Now, there's more people that are born and raised in New York City, Manhattan, than in the whole state of Iowa. So I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that was our choice as two farm kids that grew up in small communities that could ride their bikes and go out and do whatever they want from a very young age, to have their kids in the same environment. And that's why we decided Iowa would be a good choice for us.
But I had some notes from before. You said it wasn't as easy as that because you thought you were staying in New York and you put a deposit down on a house, right? And then your wife says, oh, we need to move to Iowa. I want to be with my family. And now you've got a house that you put a deposit on.
Oh, geez, you put me on the spot here. Yes, we made an offer. I had the agreement in hand. We made a deposit, and we had to find a way out. Luckily, I had some knowledge in real estate, being from real estate, and we could find. I had the ability to find the issues that the agreement had, and we could get out of it. So we did get out of it, and eventually able to move ourselves to Iowa.
Good. As long as no one listening here is going to chase you down because you reneged on the deal, we're good.
It's been so long, right?
But so you make the move back to Iowa, where your wife's family is from, right?
Yeah, my wife's family is from Northwest Iowa, about 2 hours away from where we live now. We live just on the outskirts of Des Moines, in a suburb of Des Moines called Clive. And moving to Iowa, I thought, great, real estate is cheap compared to New York.
Yeah.
And I was a cocky 30-year-old, sold my business, Israeli, lived in New York, moved to Iowa, right? So I want you to picture this, because in the Midwest, people are very reserved. They are very modest, okay? And shoot, I knew it all, right? Hey, who can beat me? I know it all. So I moved here and we bought a house, and it was easy. It was, when I say it was easy, it felt very easy compared to transactions in New York. And I said, oh gosh, I can do this. Yeah, it's very simple. Why not? And I took an office space and I started doing real estate here. It wasn't that easy. I was cocky. It took time to start building myself, and then I got beat up a lot because I thought I knew it all. I came from a huge market, New York City, and who can beat me in Des Moines, Iowa? Small little town, right? Everybody's so nice. They're innocent. They're not. They're smart. They know what they're doing. And I got beat up too, on deals, on transactions, and I had to reinvent myself in the Midwest. Truth is, I'm still reinventing myself in the Midwest. Culturally, I think it's, when I say culturally, yes, it is culturally, because Israelis are extremely direct. They don't sugarcoat anything. They say what's on their mind, and nice or not nice or good, whatever it is, doesn't mean we don't love you, doesn't mean we don't have affection for you, doesn't mean we don't want to do business with you. It's just we're extremely direct. And in New York, I don't think it's a challenge, because there's so many people that you can pick and choose who you're doing business with. You move to Iowa, and it's more of a challenge, because anyone you meet or bump into, you might bump into again.
Right.
Because it's a small community. So you have to be cautious with how you approach people. And culturally, that's still, for me, something I'm working on. So EQ is when I say EQ, emotional intelligence is extremely important in the Midwest, I think.
And in my perspective, listening to what you're talking about, is you learned a tough lesson, which is it's not what you know, it's who you are, and the relationships you develop and the way you treat people is why you get business. There's no secret to it, but people think it's, oh, I'm the best, I know the most, look at my track record. But nobody cares about that when you don't care about them. And that's why this You Matter show, right? It's value and appreciation. You better show up as a person that's sympathetic, empathetic, and knows their stuff, but you gotta develop the relationship. That's the key to everything, whether it's business or personal. If that relationship's not working because you're not being the person that you could be, thinking you're being the person you should be, which is not just knowledgeable and the best coming from New York with a great chip on your shoulder. You needed to tone it down and meet people where they are.
Correct. That's a very good point. And I think I missed that point when I first moved here. So I had a challenging 3 years when I started in my business. I had the financial ability to still move forward, but it wasn't as fast as I expected. It wasn't as big as I expected. It wasn't as impactful as I expected. And with that, I'll tell you a crazy story, okay? Because it's related. I purchased this house in not the best area of Des Moines. It was a deal. When I say a deal, it was a steal. And I was so excited about it. It was a steal. I got this amazing deal. And I did everything by the book, right? So I pulled permits. I did everything that I am supposed to do by the book. but I had a disconnect to what the book was and how you do things exactly by the book, right? So what you think you're supposed to do and what you're actually supposed to do could be different things, and they're up to interpretation. And you know this. I was born in Israel, so I'm Jewish, and in Judaism, everything is up to interpretation, including our holiest book, right? And that's how I was in business. It's up to interpretation. Instead of listening to others and understanding others, I I interpreted what I wanted to interpret it, and I moved forward. So I purchased this house, and I pulled the permits, and I started renovation, and I got this house completely finished, and I placed it on the market. And the house sold. When I say it sold, it was under contract. And throughout the inspection process, the inspector figured out that, wait a minute, this house is cannot sell. There's issues with this house. Like, what are the issues? And I always used to speak to the neighbors and give them my phone number and say, hey, if there's any issue, just give me a call. One day the neighbor calls me. It's about 4:45 in the evening, and I'm at home. And he says, the city is dropping off an excavator right here in the yard. You might want to come by. And so I jump in my car, and it's about a 15-minute drive. And I get there, and lo and behold, there's a freaking excavator there and a pickup truck of the city. And I get out, and I'm like, what's going on here? And they're like, well, this house has got a permit for demo on it from the city. It's been condemned.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm like, what the heck? So I showed the guy the house. I said, it's been perfect. It's completely renovated. It's brand new. It's actually under contract. It's sold. And he said, well, you got to go to the building department in the morning and figure out what's going on. So I go in the morning, bright and early, to the building department. And the house was condemned 8 years prior to me purchasing the house. And it takes a long time for a demo permit to be approved. But in the interim, it goes to a judge, a county judge, that signs it to get condemned that they can demo it. In that interim, it goes out of the building department, the systems of the building department, because it goes to the courthouse. So they do not know where it stands. It's not in their system. So they pulled all the permits for me. They couldn't see that it was going to go to be condemned, and then they received it back, and they pulled the permit to demo it because it was condemned. So I had to go through about a 3-month process, go meet with the judge, ask him to reverse the condemnation. I had to meet with the inspector that condemned it.
Wow.
Which he was retired. Now, I think that if I would have done things properly and done my research properly and not made assumptions, I probably would have figured this out prior to the hardship that I went through. But yeah, it's business. That's how you learn. You make mistakes.
What was the outcome?
The outcome is I sold the house.
Okay.
I got everything. I got everything reversed. I had to do a couple of tests and stuff like that to pass it. But the house sold to the individual that purchased it. It cost a lot of money. I did not earn money on that flip, but it sold.
So another lesson: when you're doing a big deal, never make assumptions.
Yeah. Do the research. I think we all, like I said, I was cocky. I thought I knew it all. I thought it took me 10 minutes to do the research. It takes a little longer than that.
It's very easy to get humbled in this world, and in life. So you were. So how do you go from real estate to owning a spirits company?
Yeah, great. In 2018, two friends decided to go into this joint venture of creating this company called Blue Ox. And they were looking for investments and investors. And I jumped in as an investor and advisor to the company. And it was a lot of fun because I didn't have to actually be in the company. I was just an investor and an advisor. So once every 2 weeks, I used to show up for an advisement and talking to people and to the company and to the employees and to the owners. And it was awesome. And they had a fight.
Oh, gosh.
Yes, which always happens, right? So
Right.
the two partners had a fight, and the one partner did not want anything to do with the other. And how do we resolve it? We buy that partner out. So I go in and purchase his shares and take more possession, a little further possession of the company. But I still want nothing to do in the day to day. I know nothing about the industry besides serving drinks that I did 15 years ago, right?
Right. That's easy.
Like, what do I know about it?
Mm-hmm.
And, COVID happened, and I think everybody was in the exodus, exodus from your job and stuff like that. And the owner that was currently involved wanted out. I want out. I want to sell. I don't want it anymore. It's too much of a headache. I want out. What do you mean? Like, we're building something, yeah. Or you're building something, yeah. I believed in you, right? Well, what are you talking about? And I had to buy him out and take possession and start learning the industry, and that's when I went full. Actually, in October of 2021 is when I took full possession of the company. So it was all a transition time, and then in October of 2021, he was done. He was out. He's gone to do different things.
So you go from real estate to spirits, and one thing I didn't know that we talked about actually, that Iowa was a good state for vodka.
I was the best state for spirits. I know you're laughing about it, but
No.
not just because I live here, I say that. Corn Iowa's the biggest state for corn. And I don't know if you knew that. I know everybody confuses it with Idaho and potatoes, but Iowa is corn. Idaho potato, Iowa corn. And a lot of alcohol is made out of corn. A lot of people's favorite bourbons are made out of corn. That's what bourbon is. And the state is very favorable to distilleries and ethanol plants. And ethanol plants is all gasoline made out of corn. And it was when I say it was an easy transition into it, the story was an easy transition because my wife's grandfather was the first legal distillery in Iowa. He used to distill corn to make fuel for his tractors. Not for consumption, but for use on his farm equipment. He had the first legal distillery. So I grabbed on that story and I'm like, hey, let's do some products that relate to that. And we thought of a lot of different products, but our vodka really took off. So it's good, clean, easy on the palate vodka, made out of corn. So it's got a little bit of a sweeter sense to it or taste to it. And because it's all sourced in Iowa, made in Iowa, it's very economical.
It's fantastic. Like you said, who knew growing up in Israel and being part of a farming community, right? You end up years later, not that you're farming, but you have to deal with those things in order to create the product that you're now offering. And all the things that happen, like I said, you can't connect the dots moving forward, only looking back. And the fact that your wife's grandfather, right, was in the business, I mean, not in the spirits business, but still in the distillery business, right, to create the fuel. What are the chances? So we all look at life sometimes and think that things happen randomly, but if you keep moving forward and you do the work you're supposed to do, what happens is they don't happen randomly. They happen on purpose. You just don't know it at the time.
Yeah.
What you need to do to move forward all the time. And you mentioned early on, so when you were growing up, you said you had a learning challenge.
Yeah.
Which is what?
I have serious learning disabilities. I've always had them. Nobody discovered them when I was at school until a very late age. I did not do good at school at all. I went to school to socialize. I didn't go to school to study anything. In high school, I can't tell you how many times I was told that I could not continue being in high school. And my dad was a mechanic. Well, he owned a mechanic shop. And I say he owned, it was on the community where we grew up. And he said, no big deal, you could come work with me. And that's one thing I hated. I hated my hands getting greasy. Hated it. I love cars, love driving them. I'm not going to get my hands dirty in them. So, yeah.
But you figure now that, like I said, no one diagnosed it till later, that one of the challenges maybe you didn't like school or like learning is because you had a disability that wasn't diagnosed early on. Any other times, Gil, throughout your journey here that you felt that you didn't matter but overcame that? I mean, it sounds like you went through some pretty interesting times being in real estate, seeing the real estate industry crash, right, in 2008, and then owning a new company in COVID, and your partner bails on that because doesn't want to do it anymore. So a lot of people did that during COVID. A lot of people left, when the bust happened, but you stayed on. How do you manage to be resilient and keep going when things are kind of falling apart around you?
First of all, my name is Gil. Gil in Hebrew means happiness. So
cool.
Yeah, it means happiness. And sometimes I'm overly positive. I take a situation, and my wife at least says this to me. I'm overly positive. Like, I have to be a little more reserved in my positivity. People are not always positive, but that's just who I am. I'm positive. Life is good. I love life. We got an abundance of everything. I mean it. I look back, I didn't have everything when I grew up. We didn't have a ton of money. When I say we didn't have a ton of money, we didn't have any money. But I still had everything I needed and wanted. Today, my kids want something, they get it, which is freaking crazy. I think I spoil them. But I have the vehicle I want. I have a house that's bigger than what I could ever imagine I would have. I have a big yard, and I have clothes. Like, life is good. We have food on the table always. How can we complain? Like, I'm not hunting for anything. I'm not hunting for food.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of simple, right? And you also have the perspective of not having a lot when you grew up. So when you get something even more than you had, which was almost nothing, you're excited about that, and it helps you be fulfilled. And it's interesting. I didn't know Gil in Hebrew meant happiness. That's great. It's something I'm going to take away from this.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
When I was a kid, I used to hang out with friends, and we always used to imagine ourselves living in a place where the worst thing that could happen was the height of the waves that we could go surfing. Okay, that's what we used to talk about, because growing up in Israel, it's a constant battle. It's a constant geopolitical issues are bad, so we won't go into that. But it's a constant battle, and as a kid, that's what you think about. Okay, where can we move? Where the only thing you can think about is the waves, the height of the waves, because we want to go surfing. And I moved to Iowa, and I'll tell you, in Iowa, every 7 minutes on the news, there's the weather forecast. Small talk in Iowa is all about the weather, because that's what goes on here. Like, knock on wood, there's very little crime. Things are not, there's no traffic because it's not a huge metropolitan area. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing really to talk about besides, oh, don't you love the weather today? Oh yeah, it's great. Like, every 7 minutes you talk about the weather. So instead of going and moving to a place where you check the waves, over here we check the weather, what the temperature is going to be in the morning when I go jogging,
It sounds like a pretty simple life, and like you say, you don't have the geopolitical concerns you did in living in Israel, but it's good perspective to have. I think a lot of people that live in different countries and come to America have great perspective that we don't. People who were born here, which I think happens in any country. If you went from America to Israel, right, you'd have different perspective on that, which is why the world's so great. You can go from place to place and still flourish if you actually, control the inner part of you, which is said being positive. I read a book called Same as Ever, and the author talks about being a reasonable optimist. Right? You should be an optimist. You should think things are going to be good, but at the same time, understand that things that have never happened before happen all the time. And just be aware of that, because that's life. but it doesn't mean you can't think positive that things will go well. And when they don't, that's why you work on yourself so you can bounce back when the times are tough, because there will be tough times. It's just living this life. So let's wrap up with this. I really appreciate you taking the time, Gil, to talk with us on the You Matter Show podcast. If you had to share one thing about you, we talked about a lot of things. What would be the one message you would want people to know either about you, remember you, what kind of legacy you're creating? What's that one thing of everything you spoke about today that you'd want to share?
That's a hard question to answer.
It always is.
To make it simple, I want to be myself better every day, right? And I'm stealing it from somebody else we know, but that truly is that's truly the direction I've gone. I used to be very concentrated on how to build wealth, and my concentration today is completely different. It's how do I get better, and it has no relations to wealth, and how do I promote freedom. And people don't understand what freedom is, but freedom is eventually, with a tool, money, and money helps people. The tool of money helps people with freedom. So how do I promote that, and how do I that's so just myself, taking care of myself, being better for others around me, and being the best self that I can be for the people that are closest to me and are around me, and get more people around me to be close to me.
Being better every day, right? And being around people that also want the same thing. There's no reason we can't drop Darren Hardy's name in there, because that's the slogan for or one of the mottos of his program.
And I love it.
Right? And that's what it takes. Because if growth is always the goal, then you can have a good life. It's true, because you're always striving for something. It's when you sit back and say, oh, I'm good, I'm successful, like you did when you left New York and came to Iowa. I already got this down. That's when you get slapped in the face and realize, you know what? I'm not actually as good as I thought I was. Maybe where you were, but you're in a different place. And you have to meet people, like I said, where they are now. That's the key. And it humbles you. And you also have to be a chameleon, be able to pivot and change, because that's what it takes to be emotionally resilient, to have emotional IQ, right? Emotional intelligence to deal with people in business and even in family. So awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story, Gil. I think it's great. Great to talk to you. I'm glad we met, and now you're on the podcast. So we will certainly stay in touch. And this is the You Matter Show podcast. So our special guest today was Gil Coosner. Thank you, Gil, for everything that you shared.
Thank you.
And appreciate talking to you. And anyone listening, tune in again next time for another episode of the You Matter Show podcast. I'm Mark Bradinsky. And remember, you matter. See ya.